Hello, this is Brian.
And this is Stephanie.
Welcome to the making and the remaking of Codependent Mind.
This season, we've been talking about tools in your relationship toolkit. And a lot of the tools are things that you wouldn't necessarily think of when you think of tools. Empathy, curiosity. But today we're going to talk about something that's marketed explicitly as a relationship tool. The 5 love languages.
Yes, there's a whole industry. I mean, this is from the early 90s, I think, this book. So it's been around a while and has sold a lot of copies.
If you go to the website, now the 5 love languages is a registered trademark even, and the website claims that the 5 love languages is a simple and effective way to strengthen your connections so you can experience greater joy and harmony in all of your relationships. So again, pretty explicitly billing itself as a tool to strengthen your connection, which is one of the types of relationship work that we've been talking about. It also, claims to bring about self-knowledge and knowledge about your partner. So that's another category of relationship work that we're interested in. So here's a tool that, again, claims to be simple and effective. And it also says on the website, relationships don't have to be complicated.
As if they are complicated, we're doing something wrong. There must be something wrong with our relationship if it's complicated.
Which off the top seems ridiculous. Whether or not they have to be, they are. So I guess they have to be because they are. But we'll talk more about that. So the 5 love languages are...
We'll just list them out here. I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory, I think. But, we'll talk a little bit more about them as we talk about this. But there's words of affirmation. There's quality time. There's acts of service, gifts, and physical touch.
I do want to say, though, about physical touch, that seems to me different than all the rest, in that physical touch is so important to us as people, as human beings. It's important for our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health. It's kind of like making food a love language. We all need it. We all have a physiological response to it, which is a little different than like getting gifts. Like we don't need to get a gift if we're not going to die. And we're not going to just fall down dead too if we don't get physically touched. But it has such powerfully negative effects on our bodies. It can absolutely lead to an early death. But okay, that aside. So the idea, these are 5 love languages, meaning these are kind of 5 fundamental ways that people express their love or want love expressed to them. And we're supposed to learn our own and learn our partners. And supposedly there's a primary love language, and then there's maybe a secondary love language. But there's very much this idea that, it's mostly one. It's not like, here are all the ways you can give and receive love. It's very much you have a love language and maybe a secondary language. And then, of course, within those, there's a lot of, he says there's a lot of dialect, different ways to give gifts, different ways to offer quality time, etc. So it's billed as supposedly this tool for connection and knowledge, and not just a tool, a powerful tool. Like It's going to take this complicated thing, a relationship, and it's totally simple and easy to use, and you just use it and bam, connection strengthened, knowledge achieved.
And they describe it as though it's this quick fix to, if you are disconnected, it's most likely because you're expressing what you find to be your love language and the other person isn't receiving it because it isn't theirs. Now,
you and R had a complicated relationship, which may be an understatement. And this was a tool that you picked up in order to...
She wasn't feeling fulfilled in the relationship, and she seemed to think as though it was because of the way my behaviors were coming across. They weren't specific enough to what she wanted me to be, she wanted me to be behaving.
She didn't feel the way she wanted to feel in the relationship, and as usual, her feelings were your problem.
Yes.
There was something wrong with you. So you were to read this book, learn about her, and use the tool to make her feel better.
So I read this book, and what I determined was that it seemed as though she appreciated it, especially when I did things for her, like when I served her, like say, brought her coffee in the morning and things like that. And she confirmed, yes, that is what I appreciate the most, and that will make me feel better if you're serving me. So that's how acts of service was perceived, and that's how it was. And that was the primary love language determined.
But she didn't read the book. This is just you reading the book.
No. Well, yeah, and I asked her to, because she asked me to, and she said, no, I don't need to do this, because it wasn't about learning each other or learning what each other needed.
It was really about getting you to perform better.
Yes. But when it came down to it, really, she wanted all of them, and she wanted me to be providing all of them. So there wasn't really a primary in this case. And it was just, my needs are the most important thing. I need to be trying to meet my needs at all times.
And my needs are so great for attention and validation and love and service, which takes us to kind of one of my first concerns with this whole theoretical framework, is that it really seems like these aren't love languages. These are trauma languages.
I think that's definitely the case for, obviously, me and her.
So when you're dealing with people who are struggling with trauma coming out of their childhood, it seems often to be tied to their experience of being loved, such that maybe they didn't receive unconditional love. The love that came their way had strings attached, which is what you felt. They didn't trust, or they felt they couldn't trust the love that was given. Or there's people also who just didn't receive any, or didn't receive it at any kind of level that they needed to and that they deserved to. Because these love languages or these trauma languages seem rooted in that, so that there's this distrustful mindset behind this whole idea. Even someone who's there loving you and is there because they love you, that's not enough. You don't feel it. You don't trust it.
And somehow these acts, learning a specific act, say service, words, saying certain words, that's going to do it.
Well, and you, what did you decide your love language was?
So I decided mine was words of affirmation.
Which is interesting, right? Because when we started going out, you were distrustful of my words of affirmation. They made you uncomfortable.
And I believe I've always been that way. So it's kind of interesting that I picked that, because really I think at the time it was more for me that I didn't want hurtful words. That was the main thing. And every day I was feeling harmed by words.
So you thought, well, my love language must be the opposite. But it wasn't just words of affirmation that made you anxious. You were anxious receiving love.
Absolutely.
Across the board. You were anxious with me giving you physical affection, verbal affection. You were uncomfortable with me getting you gifts. You were very uncomfortable with me doing anything for you, like bringing you coffee or making you dinner. Again, because I think you had a trauma response to receiving love. And you can kind of see R and then subsequently J also have an equal but opposing trauma response where they need to have all of this stuff. Like that is the extent of love, right? So if you're distrustful of just someone's emotional life, one is to like, well, I want to see it tangibly given to me in all these different ways. Or you were like, I don't want to receive it. Mm-hmm. I'm scared of it.
Yeah, well, and I think it's interesting because what I don't remember from those dialogues was whether or not I actually felt it. Like it didn't kind of matter whether I meant it, really. Like she wasn't interested in whether I actually wanted to do these things or really actually legitimately loved her. It's just do all these things.
Yeah, so getting a gift, and she wanted gifts in that she wanted you to buy her all the stuff. That in of itself soothes her anxiety, fills this hole that she's trying to fill. So getting a word of affirmation, getting a gift, having someone to serve her, doesn't matter what's behind it. The language in there is a language of soothing, is a language of reassuring herself. That act is a reassurance.
And I mean, just to go back to the money episode when we talked about needs, this isn't actually really, it never worked for very long. I mean, because she's trying to get an external source, me, to provide something so that she can feel whole, that she can feel good about herself, feel good about her relationship, her life, because I'm saying these things or I'm doing these things. So
it doesn't last very long. Alongside this distrustful mindset, there's this scarcity mindset where there is, again, you didn't receive what you needed to as children. And then so we have codependence strategies like, well, I will just not want or expect or need anything. And then that's how I'll address my scarcity. And then our narcissistic people more, I will expect and want everything. And that's how I will address my scarcity. Or you can mix it up and do a little bit of both, right? But there's this idea there's not enough out there. So I need to consume, or I don't need anything. So I'm okay.
So yeah, you talk about our early relationship. It's not that I didn't trust you, but somehow I just did not trust receiving in general. I mean, I just was not used to it. I never really had. And when I did, I didn't trust it. For most of the relationships in my life, it didn't feel genuine. It didn't feel like this was an actual connection. So oftentimes it may have even been manipulative. But at the same time, also, I needed these things. So it was a difficult balancing act. So if I did receive them, maybe it would work to some extent, kind of like me providing these things for R. Maybe it'll work for the day or the afternoon or whatever it is. But then it's not going to work very long term because I'm not actually providing the things that she didn't get throughout her life either.
And you've talked about the beginning of the relationship with Jay, where there was heavy love bombing and including major words of affirmation alongside of kind of abusive behavior and language. But you feeling that as, oh, she's better than R. Like I'm moving into a situation where I'm getting this love that I wasn't getting from her.
Yeah, I think I used that to fuel that narrative that I had at the time, that I was, because there was crossover between those two relationships where I'd go from R to where it's nothing but disdain and insults. And then I go to this other place where Jay's telling me I'm handsome and sexy and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, whoa, all right, that's nice affirmation. That's a nice difference from receiving only negative words.
You know, on the other hand, we're talking about a dysfunctional relationship. And we say, in the tools that we discuss here and in the next book, you shouldn't use any of these tools to prop up a dysfunctional relationship. But even in a functional relationship, so let's talk about our relationship. You know, one thing that both of us had noticed about looking at these quizzes that you can take, including one on the official site, is that we both seem kind of drawn to the things that we're not getting out of the relationship.
Well, this goes back to the R example. That's exactly what, you know, it wasn't necessarily that I wasn't getting, but it was I wanted to not be insulted. So it was like this kind of extreme version of that. But I've heard other people say this same thing. I don't know if it was a comedian or something, but I've heard more than one person say that exact same observation, was that, oh, it's most likely going to be whatever you're not getting. Because if you are getting it consistently, then you might not think of that as being a love language necessarily.
Or your primary language, because the quizzes ask you to prioritize among the five, only five. And so I just recently took the test, and that's exactly what happened. So one example would be you have to choose between what's more meaningful to you. And my choice was something like your partner brings you a gift after traveling. And the other one was your partner spends an evening with you, something like that, to indicate quality time. So, you know, putting gifts versus quality time. Well, I don't actually really care that much about gifts, but in that situation, I would choose the gift because we spend the evening together all the time. So it's not like I'm missing the gifts, but yeah, like if you suddenly came home with a gift, I'd be like, oh, wow, this never happened. So
yeah, it's more rare, right?
It's more rare, right? So it's not really telling me anything about me. It's just telling me about my current situation, my relationship, which has some value. But it's supposed to be telling something about me, like something inherent to me. And it turns out, according to this quiz, my primary language, like it's 30% or something, was physical touch. I couldn't see the rest. I have to pay to see the rest, and I'm not going to do that. And what's funny about that is like, well, I already knew that. I mean, I know that I like physical touch in a relationship. I didn't need to take a quiz to learn that. I learned that the old-fashioned way, in that I've had relationships, and I've had relationships in which there was a lot of physical affection because we were both people were comfortable with that, and relationships in which it wasn't physical affection. And, you know, it's not like I gave up on the relationship that didn't have physical affection. It's, in fact, my longest relationship. But I missed it. I like that in my life. I enjoy that in my life. So that brings us to what I think is the biggest problem with this tool, is it's so reductive. So it can be a tool, I guess, for knowledge, but it is not actual knowledge. You don't take a quiz and know it about yourself. It can be a tool for connection, but it is not actual connection. Exchanging your love languages does not make you more connected. And even performing your love languages doesn't lead to actual connection.
Yeah, I mean, I think about, okay, let's say mine's touch or yours is touch, and I learn that. And I go, okay, great. Well, I'm going to make sure to always hug you once an hour or something. There we go. I've done my job. I've touched you. Or I suggest we always sit next to each other on the couch and I put my arm around you. Like, there we go. That was easy.
Yeah, and in fact, that's what you did in the relationship with Jay, and that's how you decided that guys were intimate, because you sat together close and cuddled.
Right. And quality time too, because I mean, I considered quality time, and I've read that this being an example, it's not just quality as in like we're having a great conversation. It could also even just be doing something together, like watching TV. And so I had that nailed too. And I mean, that's pretty simple. So you're doing this. It doesn't matter if you actually feel connected through this experience, as long as you're doing it. That seems to be the main point.
All of these things can be ways to express love, but it is not actually love. This is what you were just saying. It could be manipulation, it could be obligation, it could be any number of things. So really, there's no shortcuts to knowledge, and there are no shortcuts to connection. It just seems to me that you take this quiz and either you don't learn anything about yourself, which is my experience. I didn't learn anything about myself, zero, that I did not already know. Or you do, and then why? Like, why do you have to take a quiz, an online quiz, to learn what things you want or need or value in a relationship?
In my case, being like, oh, words of affirmation. What did I learn? Actually, I learned, because what I came to find, as you said, they actually made me uncomfortable receiving actual, real, legitimate words of affirmation. So what did I learn exactly?
You got false knowledge because you let a quiz tell you how you feel rather than doing the work yourself.
It's like a misdiagnosis or something.
Absolutely, which can be very damaging both to the individual and to the relationship. You're like, oh, all we need to do is find out each love languages, and then this complicated relationship will be simple. And then it's not.
So then what? We learn the wrong language. Try again. Take the quiz again.
Right. Just keep taking the quiz. You get the answer. Yeah, that's just reductive nature of the tool, I think, can make it actually destructive and make its utility really questionable. Well, let's see if is there any way that this love language tool framework is helpful. I mean, it's not really a tool in the robust sense that we've been using the word tool. You can't do it to do serious work. It's more like a kind of discussion topic.
A starting point.
Yeah, which is fair enough because, we've used discussion topics about different decks of cards, and it can be helpful to get, as you say, a starting point. And anything that helps you talk about yourself and your relationship is probably going to be productive of some knowledge. But we've kind of talked about maybe two ways that this specific discussion topic, 5 love languages, might be somewhat useful in our relationship, say, even.
One way it can be helpful is just looking at all 5 of these things together and having a conversation about them. Are each of us satisfied kind of in general about each of these 5 things? Because I think we need all 5. All of us kind of need all of these things in a relationship to actually feel connected and loved. But legitimately, how do we feel about it? Not just like which one is most important.
Are we satisfied in this relationship with the level of each? So we did that. We had that conversation. That was useful. Like you said, all of these things are valuable. And
so for people like me that have a history of struggling to even think about what I need at all to begin with, this is a helpful thing to do. It gives me a little bit of a framework. Oh, I can think about these 5 specific things. That makes it a little easier. Touch is important to me. Yes. Words are important to me. And then how we got to this point where, it seems as though I'm uncomfortable with some of these things. And then that's another conversation.
And that's the second way that we can feel it be useful. So this first way, we found it useful to, here's a list of things. How do each of us feel we're doing in those categories in our relationship? Are we getting what we want and what we need in those areas? Although we don't have to stick with 5. I mean, you can put other areas on there if you want. But the second way is to prompt a discussion about each of our experiences of those different ways of giving and receiving love. So really trying to get at how each of us have very different experiences of loving and being loved, going all the way back through childhood. And those experiences of loving and experiences of being loved, have brought into this relationship. Like you said, this became a way to uncover and to talk more about your difficulty in receiving love.
Yeah. So then we're having conversations about our entire life, not just right now. So when we're talking about, say, when, again, I was feeling uncomfortable by receiving, it wasn't immediately obvious, but it became obvious that I was uncomfortable receiving some of these things. Why is that? Now this becomes part of our discussion about our histories and what we are bringing to the relationship, and why it might be that we prefer certain ways of communication versus others, or why certain ones are more uncomfortable than others. And it doesn't have to be that way forever. That's part of the discussion.
Because the whole idea of this kind of primary, secondary, again, so reductive. Why would I want to reduce the ways in which I express my love or receive love? Like, I like all of those things. I'll take, I don't want to be narcissistic about it, but I enjoy and value all of those things.
Yeah, isn't it kind of situation specific too? Yeah, one isn't going to necessarily be more just always appropriate depending on the situation too. Just like, oh, yep, gifts are always mine, so no matter what, gifts are going to be more appropriate. Even if I'm having an emotional problem and it would be much better if you just gave me a hug or something. But no, a gift. Yes, no, stick with the gift.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing, right? So your love language supposedly was words of affirmation. So, which also is a little bit weird, right? It's not just words, it's like affirmation. Like, I need to be told, which again, it feels more like this is my trauma language. This is how I need my trauma to be addressed by you, is for you to tell me all the time
that I'm handsome, or that I'm great in some way.
Yeah. So, okay, great. Now I just have to affirm you, and voila, you feel loved, right? So that's the reductive version of it. But instead, what is a more fruitful conversation is like, well, what is your experience of words of affirmation? What do you feel when you hear them? How did that become connected to feeling loved for you?
Yes, I like that a lot. That makes sense.
And that, I think those kind of conversations can produce real feelings of connection and real knowledge they have for us. Everyone has an experience of loving and being loved that's informing their current experience of the relationship.
When we were talking about this, you said one of those phrases that people use for children, use your words. And that's something that it's good to just be able to communicate, remember to communicate, because I sometimes have to remind myself to say things out loud.
Absolutely. It's good to express your love. Really, it's just good to express yourself. It's very important in a relationship to this old-fashioned communication to have some sense of what you feel or think and to express it. Words or with gestures, words have better, but sometimes gestures work too.
Yeah, or touch or whatever it is.
And I think if it's motivated by honest emotion, the other person will feel it. Just going back to this kind of distrust, like, why do you need a gift to believe your partner loves you? Or why, if your partner isn't expressing their love in exactly your love language, do you not feel it? Like that, I think, has, again, more what happened to you. It's not something inbred in you. It's things happen to you such that you couldn't receive love except for in very specific ways.
And that's why I think it's not even effective if you say, oh, I'm gifts, and then I just keep receiving gifts. What I've come to find, it's the difference between expressing what I'm feeling in the moment that I feel it. So say I'm feeling love for you. Say I love you. I'm feeling close to you. I feel like I want to touch you. I touch you. Not this, I need to do something here. Because I've felt that many times. So in those old relationships with R&J, I need to do something. So that's the performance factor of it. So say, oh, your love language is gifts. I better give you a gift. It's been a while since I gave. It's not being motivated by, oh, I love you. I remember you said you wanted this, and that's great. But if it's not coming from that place, if it's coming from the I need to perform here, or else they're not going to feel my love, then that's a totally different thing.
Because they're not looking for your love. Ultimately, they're looking to heal their own sense of emptiness or shame or insecurity, and you're to provide that for them.
I think that's totally correct.
Like you said, that is never going to work long term. If your experience of loving and being loved is primarily based on scarcity, anxiety, distrust, then there's no amount of gifts. There's no amount of words of affirmation that are going to solve that. There needs to be internal sources for those things.
Right. And goes back to interdependence. So this needs to be tied into an interdependent relationship, not two people that don't understand themselves, don't have any self-knowledge, and don't have emotional maturity, and don't know what they actually need.
But again, we had a good conversation about it when we talked about it in that second way. Like, well, what are our feelings about all of these 5 things currently in our relationship? Are they in the mix in a way that we both appreciate it and enhances our connection? And then the second one being our feelings about each of these categories, of each of these ways of expressing love. How are they connected to our past relationships and our childhood experiences? Those are interesting.
I agree. And how can we grow from that knowledge? How can we continue to grow? Because we will probably continue to have conversations around this. It is not kind of like this one-time thing.
But I mean, you can get the 5 love languages off any website. So we are not recommending. This does not have the Codependent Mind seal of approval investing any money in this particular tool.
Instead, just have these conversations.
And relationships are complicated.
They are.
That's just the truth. But
Sorry.
Sorry. But that's not bad.
No.
It also means that they're endlessly compelling and interesting, and there's always room for growth.
I mean, I think that's a good thing, that relationships complicated. If they're not, then I'm not paying attention, or I'm not being curious.
Because the people in them are complicated.
Yes.
So we're going to recommend instead holding out for our new book, which hopefully will be out within the next month.
Yes. Early to mid-June. Yeah, we're getting there. We're very close. And so it goes into all these tools that we've been talking about in this season, but also over the course of the last 3 or 4 seasons.
So watch for that, and you'll hear from us in a couple of weeks. Thanks for listening.